everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Optional Forms of Government Study Commission to order.
Yeah.
We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Bruce, would you lead us in the pledge?
Everyone remove their hats, hand over your heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See, I did it. I did it.
Call for approval or changes to the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
Question, we talked about support for David. Is that on here in any way for the minutes?
I mean, support for David, what?
That when Nancy is no longer helping with the minutes, David Levine, who we talked a little bit at the end of last week, that we were going to discuss amongst us who was going to help support him?
That would be in the following meetings section.
Okay.
Anything else? Approval of the minute of the agenda?
Move approval.
Okay, Bob Fish moves for approval. Brian has seconded. Call for vote. Approve the agenda. Agenda is approved. Announcements? Anybody? I'm getting an echo here. There sounds like some feedback. Nancy? Is anybody else hearing that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just me. Okay, everything's set? I'm not hearing it. Anybody else? Cleared up? Okay.
You're good now.
Okay. Move to the approval of the minutes, September 15th minutes. We all have them in front of us. Any issues with the September 15th minutes? No? Move for approval? I need a motion.
I move.
Brian Bob moves, Brian seconds. Approve? Minutes are approved. We'll move on. We have no reports. We're moving on to the new business. I have been told that Dan English has another meeting that he needs to leave for shortly. And
well,
I would like
a little before, about 6:45. So
okay.
I hope I get to hear some of the others too.
I would like to start with Dan then with the interviews, and we'll move forward from there.
Okay.
If
Great.
you'd like to make an opening statement.
Sure. I haven't been here to watch how you do it, so I just kind of prepared some things, kind of my background that I think would be relevant to what you're talking about, and then, from that experience, some of the conclusions and kind of takeaways, and then what I think you may be after is, okay, well, what would you do? So my specific recommendations of, okay, if I had the magic wand, this is what I would do. First off is I want to really applaud the Board of Commissioners and you folks for taking the time to do this and to do it right. And I should back up a second. I'm dressed a little casually, but I wore a special shirt tonight. I don't know if the folks can see it, but I've heard it's kind of a rough bunch. And so I thought, well, I don't know if they're going to talk smack to the old guy in the golden retriever puppy shirt. Oh well. But so anyway, that's that's me. Got it. Hopefully, still a sense of humor. But and again, applaud you for taking the time. My experience, they ran a couple of issues, put it on the ballot about optional forms of county government, but especially the first one, I guess my takeaway, having been here, lived with it, and all of that, having been on, and I'll mention, school board and different things, is like if if the governing board decides to put something on the ballot, then it should be something that they believe in and they're willing to, kind of go to the mat to at least defend it or defend why it's on the ballot. And my feeling is before it was like, there have been people for a long time that have been talking about this, and at different times, once it was possible, couple of times commissioners said, okay, we better do something, we better, to be able to say we put something on there. They did, but they didn't really have heart or soul in it, and didn't really, like with this, look at the options, because within the optional forms chapters, I'm sure you've read, title, chapter, I think 58, I had notes written out and then forgot it, but thankfully I sent myself an email, so I think I can read it on my Kindle. And but in order to, there's lots of options out there, almost like buying a new car or a refrigerator or something. Too many things to pick from, maybe. But but anyway, I'm glad that you're doing that, getting the input from folks, and I realize this can be a controversial topic. And so anyway, my background that I think, stuff that might have some relevance, born and raised here, I'm a third-generation local native, so I have a broad and a deep sense of the community and kind of the long-term history of things. I've been hired to a number of responsible positions that take care of a lot of, people deal with money, and I've been elected to several of them. And in the past, was a school board trustee here in Kootenai for about 5 years. I was on the city council in the early 90s, and ironically, I was about halfway through my first term when the county clerk at that time, a guy named Tom Taggart, who I think you've met, got hired away, which is also kind of interesting. The Democrat clerk got hired by the Republican Board of Commissioners to be their county manager, and then they had to go through the appointment process for filling the county clerk, and I ended up getting that position, and then went on and won several of my own elections, served about 15 years with that, and then I got elected about 6 years ago now, I guess, to the Coeur d'Alene City Council. So I'm in the, kind of partway through my second term on the city council, and so, I interact with a whole lot of folks doing different things. I'm mostly retired now. My last full-time job was a director of the Area Agency on Aging, which manages and delivers senior services and for disabled folks in the 5 northern communities. And then recently decided, well, I should do a little something more than what I'm doing. So actually, I'm working part-time as a driver for a medical transport company, which is fun, and I actually get to interact with folks. And but in my other, kind of main career, I've been the director of Anchor House, the CASA program, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, Habitat for Humanity, and then, like I said, the Area Agency on Aging. And, so in all of those, dealt with managing people, dealt with budgets from the, hundreds of thousands to, well, our Coeur d'Alene one we just passed was a little over $1 million. I think that's what over 100 million. I think that's what the county is about now. I have a bachelor's in criminal justice from San Jose State, master's in counseling psych from Gonzaga, and was a licensed professional counselor for about 25 years. So, between that, I have, a pretty good sense, I think, sometimes of, what makes people and organizations tick, and kind of what makes them work well and what makes them sometimes not work so well. So from that, and I've always been active in the community doing different things. So kind of some of my takeaways from that is that, like I say, I've been hired to some pretty good positions and elected to some, but I don't think there's any comparison in the level of accountability that I think I had in the past, have now, as an elected official, one thing, I think probably more importantly than the accountability, is the accessibility. When you think about it, one example is like, we all kind of know who's the commissioners and maybe the mayors and some of that, but, for instance, who's your regional director for health and welfare? Boy, they must have hundreds of people here, and they either the 5 or 10 northern counties and all of that, but I have to tell you, I don't know, who they are. They're, hired in there. Do you think you could just say, gee, I'm upset at something health and welfare did, and I'm going to go down there and expect to get in to see them? Maybe you could, but I don't know. But whereas with your elected officials, you can, or you darn well better be able to, on fairly short notice, be able to get in there and see them. So I think that's, I think that's an important thing. One of the things, just kind of cutting to part of the chase is that, I believe in elected officials, and I do believe that the positions should stay elected for some of those reasons. And then I'll get into some other specifics, but again, I think there's something different between the folks in those positions who are, elected versus hired. At the same time, we want them to do a good job. I mean, like I say, the county budget probably is up in the 100 million range, and I know that sometimes the concern has been, and talk about, gee, if you go from 3 full-time to X amount, 5 or 7 part-time, and boy, what if it ended up costing more and stuff? I'll tell you, the money that you might spend on a couple of extra part-time commissioner salaries can be peanuts to the kinds of money that you will spend if you have poor decision-making and poor processes. Not to say, lay that at any specific commission, but, we don't have qualifications for that or anything, and some come in, have some good background, some don't. But another thing you'll see that will run through mine is I do believe in that it would be very worthwhile for the county to have a county manager again. I think that, the right person, if you did it right, can have some of those management skills and techniques and background that you don't have. And so that's, I think, a good part of why I'm after that. One of the things, when I look at like what happened before and maybe why it didn't go anywhere, also I think it relates to to the experience that the county had with the county manager in the past, is that my conclusion is that, boy, they just did not do any prep work. If the commission, or at least very little, if you're going to make that kind of a dramatic change, then, boy, you really need, even if you can't get the other electeds on board to agree to it, they should know everything about, this is what's coming on, what we're thinking of, what we're going to do, and at a point when you make your decision, this is what we're going to do, but also hopefully you've worked with them about how can we make it work best. And again, I think given if you've kind of plowed the ground, got it fertile for this, it could have a much better chance of succeeding. Unfortunately, county commissioners, as you've probably seen, don't have too much of a half-life. They're, as I look back through, the history of elected officials, which, by the way, when I was county clerk, I first put that on. I thought it was good to know who all of the past coroners or sheriffs or whatever and how long they'd been here and what years, and that, kind of an interesting thing. But, and we used to have some kind of long-term commissioners, and I mean, they're the head executive body for the county, and yet now we've gotten for a while now where, if they make it past 1 4-year, and then they're on this kind of a rotation thing where they only get a half a a 2-year term the other time. If they make it for 1-4 and 1-2, it's rare to go beyond that. Now, maybe they got appointed into one and they go a little bit longer, but that's about it. And a lot of them, frankly, if you go back and look there, I mean, they're 1 term, 4 years, maybe 1 term, 2 years. And for that top management, and the way the code is, they designed it so that every 2 years, you have the chance of a majority of your governing board turning over. I mean, 2 out of the 3 are up for election every 2 years. So in terms of if you were going to design a business model, which people talk about run the county like a business, which I have to tell you, government, I mean, there are things that you can run it like a business, but it's not exactly. There are some important distinct differences, but and actually I think the county government, which why maybe I've done a lot of the, I mean, with the nonprofit, they are much more like a nonprofit and with the accounting world and that kind of thing. But anyway, with the commissioners having that short span, then I think that's why, again, it's good to have the continuity. Now, sometimes, I mean, you do have some long-term managers and some of the row officials, you know, have been long-term, and that's a good thing. But again, my desire as a born-bred native and guy who still pays its taxes here, I'd like to see the county go out, do what it takes to find, recruit, hire a good one, and take care of them right so that they're here for the long term to serve all of us. And this thing goes to sleep once in a while. And so, what my, you know, I guess my plan A, and it's the most, you know, it's the most time consuming and takes all of that, but I think that the results would be, is the charter form of optional government, which, you know, I didn't bring my folder with that, but I think it's one of the, you know, the last chapters in that, the different versions. And, you know, without getting into the nuts and the bolts, some of the things that I think are important about it, it is, again, it's kind of a lengthy, involved process where they, you know, get a commission and do some different things. But some key things that I think are important in it is it does give you the option you can determine if they're partisan or nonpartisan positions. I've had some folks say, oh, well, you could never do nonpartisan at the county. Actually, yes, you could. If you adopted a charter form of county government, and that's what got passed, then it'd be like school boards, like city, you know, other taxing entities. And I realize that for some, you know, that's kind of a mixed bag, but my strong opinion is that, you know, the nonpartisan elections have been in the code part of our process, basically, you know, from the beginning. And there's a reason they were put in there. And at some time in the past, if the legislature really wanted to have everything partisan, they could have done it a long time ago, but they haven't, and I don't think they're going to, because I think that the public would come up over the walls. But anyway, that you could do that. Now, in my mind, if I were designing it, I would say, you know, the county commissioners, that probably should stay a partisan positions. You know, I think that, but then with the row officers, clerk, auditor, treasurer, coroner, make them non-partisan. I mean, so that would be, if you did the charter and I was the guy writing it, I would try for that. I would increase, no matter what you do, and I'll mention, you know, that's my plan A and my plan B, but I would advocate for increasing the Board of Commissioners from 3 full-time to 5 part-time. Actually, 7, you know, 7 would be good too, but I think that would be a stretch for the public, and unless things have changed, you know, even when I was here, there was hardly enough room, you know, for the 3. So they'd probably have to make accommodations to work with 5 and the support staff and all of that. And from 3 to 7 would be kind of a big jump. But again, I think the part-time, and part of what that would do it'd give you a broader range for decision-making backgrounds, but also for the folks who maybe would do a good job at coming in and want to be a county commissioner. But, you know, if it's only full-time or not, then like, wow, that's going to rule a whole lot of people out. But like with city council or something, you know, if you could do it part-time, then you could have people who, yeah, you could combine it with something else and they could really bring those skills. So anyway, it'd give you a potential greater pool of folks to elect from, and so, but, you know, that's a lengthy and all of that, and they may not go anywhere. So, you know, my plan B would be, well, take one of the, you know, there's various options, but would be something that, again, gets you from 3 full-time to 5 part-time. I would go for a county manager, which actually you wouldn't have to even do the whole optional forms of county government, but with that manager, something that I think is really important is that you really develop, okay, this is what that person would be. I think sometimes, I mean, the fear is, oh, wow, we're going to have this county manager czar for the county, and it's important to define ahead of time and work with the other officials about, gee, where could you use some help? Like, wait, I remember, like, the departments that crossed everybody, like the IT, you know, human resources personnel. There are different departments that across the board that, man, they were really valuable to all of the elected officials, take advantage of that, and a county manager could do that. So I think you want to really define what they can do, and probably maybe even more important is define what they can't do, because I think that was some of the fear of what happened before. And, you know, so you have that nailed down. So, like I say, go for something that does that. Go for a manager one way or the other. And anyway, so that's, and I'm probably taking too much time, but I would be, it's kind of me, my thoughts in a nutshell, maybe not a nutshell, but be happy to, I guess, I don't know if you do question answers or however that works.
Well, if you've got some time still,
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
We'll move on. Jill,
Yeah,
would you like
yeah,
to make an opening statement?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Oh, yeah, good.
Public speaking is not one of my superpowers, so please forgive me for reading my prepared remarks. I look forward to answering your questions at the end, and I also apologize for the lack of eye contact, because if I go off script, I'll never get back. I'm Jill Smith. I'm the Chief Deputy Treasurer for Kootenai County. I've been here for roughly 4 months, almost 5. I am a proud mom to 2 amazing adults. My son is currently living in Bend, Oregon, and I am thrilled to be able to say that my daughter has joined me here. Most recently, I served as the Chief Deputy Treasurer overseeing a team of 28 staff members for Snohomish County, which is the 3rd largest county in Washington state. Our parcel count was just over 300,000, and our annual property tax collections were roughly $1.6 billion. Investments averaged about $1.5 billion. Population is about 828,000. Prior to this position, I served as a business and finance officer too in the King County Treasury. Population of King County is 2.26 million, and if memory serves me right, we collected property tax on roughly 800,000 parcels. Our annual collections were over $6 billion, and the investment fund averaged at about $5 billion. I started my career in the treasurer's office working part-time in Island County, Washington, which is a little bit smaller than Kootenai County. I was a military wife and landed at NAS, Whidbey Island. Started in Chicago, went to Connecticut, went to California, Virginia, Washington, Norway, Washington, and now here. I think I'm a little bit of a unicorn because I don't know anyone else who's worked for elected officials. In King County, the treasurer wasn't elected, but in 4 counties in 2 states. So I think that gives me a unique perspective. I would like to start by addressing the questions around whether chief deputies are appointed or hired. I was hired after a national recruitment that lasted almost 2 months. Treasurer Matheson was given my name by someone in the industry that I had previously worked with, and aggressively pursued me. And you've all met Steve, so you know what that looks like. Once recruited and hired, I was appointed. I think that there is some confusion about what this means. As the chief deputy in statute, I'm empowered with all of the authority possessed by the elected official I work for. In his absence, I'm able to step in and act in his stead, so there's no gap in services to the citizens of Kootenai County. This is a unique relationship, and there must be absolute trust between the chief deputy and the elected. I feel very honored that I've been chosen by 2 separate treasurers. While Idaho is a work-at-will state, the reality is that if I were only hired and not then appointed, were I to break that trust, or were I to be not performing my duties at the expected level, there would be steps that would need to be taken prior to relieving me. Appointed positions do not receive the same grace. I can be relieved immediately if there are any issues with my performance, and I have no recourse. I have experience working within several governmental structures. Island County was very similar to Kootenai County as it exists today. King County and Snohomish County were both charter counties. They had elected executives in addition to council members. There were 5 council members in Snohomish County, full-time, and there were either 9 or 10 in King. Snohomish County also has an elected treasurer, auditor, clerk, assessor, sheriff, prosecuting attorney, coroner. I think I haven't forgotten anyone. I will point out, because you brought this up, in Snohomish County, those jobs, except for the council and executive, are nonpartisan. I would say that the reality is, even though technically they're nonpartisan, most people, by the time they're running for a county-wide office, have been somewhat involved in politics previously. And so while it's nonpartisan, if you look at who's contributing to the different campaigns, it isn't as nonpartisan as you would hope it could be. You know, they're still either being supported by one party or another. Let's see, King County elects only their executive, council members, assessor, they have an elections person, and the prosecuting attorney. In my experience, these alternate forms of government cost the taxpayer more money. If you add a manager or executive, you also have to add support staff. A hired manager, and this is just my opinion, has limited ability to oppose the board because the board is who hires them and the board is who has the power to fire them. If some positions remain elected and others become appointed, as we see in King County, you shift power. And so the assessor can make decisions independently. The treasury manager has to go to the finance director, who has to go to the director of executive services, who has to go to the executive. And so there's an inequity between the departments and their ability to react to the needs of the citizens. The compensation, and again, this is just my opinion, experienced professionals will accept as a public servant is less than what a hired employee will expect. I understand there's been a conversation about changing from 3 full-time commissioners to 5 part-time. I don't know if that's possible, because the reality is that you've got meetings in the morning, you've got meetings in the afternoon, you've got meetings in the evening, you've got responsibilities on the weekend, and you can call it a part-time job, but for someone to do it well, it would be difficult for a county this size, I think, for that to actually be a part-time job. I think it would end up being a full-time job at part-time pay. And I think that you would end up limiting the people that were able to run. Because if you're supporting a family, you can't quit your full-time job and do this part-time job. And you maybe don't want to do 2 full-time jobs because you have a family. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think it's great to have retirees serve on the board, but I also think it's imperative to have some diversity. So hard questions are asked and decisions are made with a wider range of sources and experiences. The citizens are best served when there are elected officials with a variety of experiences, skills, perspectives, and insights working together to solve problems. There have been conversations about keeping the Board of County Commissioners as elected officials and then hiring department heads to replace the row officials. as I previously mentioned, I think this would prove to be costly. Also, I think the commissioners would end up spending precious time managing the managers, and that would in the end leave them less time to do what they've been elected to do, which as commissioners is to set policy and represent the citizens who elected them. Most importantly to me, you dilute the voice of the voter, because now you've got department heads who are accountable not to the citizens of Kootenai County, they're accountable to the Board of Commissioners that hired them. As elected officials, the treasurer, assessor, and our other electeds are able to go head-to-head with the commissioners if there's a disagreement. They are the experts in their department. And you come in as a commissioner, and as you've said, a lot of times it's a new commissioner, and what makes sense is not always what we are allowed to do by law. Our electeds can say no if they know that they're being asked to do something that they shouldn't do. As a hired department head, it would be very difficult to tell your boss no. And some bosses would take it well, and some would not. I think there's an imbalance of power when the commissioners have the ability to fire you if you disagree with them or tell them something that they don't want to hear. Lastly, and this is maybe minimal, well, two things. One, I came from Washington State. In Island County, we had 3 commissioners and then the elected row officers. Everyone serves a 4-year term. And there's 2 are elected, say, in 2020, and then 1 will be in 2022. So there is the potential for 2 to roll over at the same time in an election. But this thing where every 3rd term you get 2 years, so basically you get voted in and you're starting your campaign again, like maybe that's part of the reason they don't stay. And
Usually they get elected out, but that's why.
And then the other thing that I don't know if this, I don't think this has been mentioned. Lori Thomas spoke and she mentioned that she was part of the National Association of County Collectors, Treasurers, and Finance Officers. I am also part of that group. I serve on the Education Committee. If you appoint department heads or hire department heads, they are based on the bylaws of a lot of these organizations, both statewide and nationwide, like the Idaho Association of County Treasurers, it's the same. In order to serve in a leadership position, you must be an elected official. And so if we hire our elected officials, Kootenai County loses a voice both on statewide and nationwide platforms, and possibly you can get those boards to change their bylaws. But then they're gonna have to change their bylaws and say, you have to be elected unless you're from Kootenai County. I don't know how likely that is, because if they open it up across the board, well then they're letting, chief deputies have leadership positions, and that's not something that they appear to be interested in. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Leanne, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, I have not prepared anything officially. I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I am Leanne Kaiser. I have worked at the county for 7.5 years. I worked as an administrative support person for 2 years in the commissioner's office, and then was hired by the clerk to work in the auditor's office as an accountant. I have a bachelor's degree in business with an emphasis in accounting and finance. And so I was hired as an accountant for the clerk's office, and I worked there 2.5 years. I was asked to come back to the commissioner's office, and I've been in the administrative supervisor position now for 3 years. I manage, I oversee 2 people, 2 staff. We did some reorganizing when we brought in the communications manager position and the business analyst, and so we have myself and 2 administrative secretaries that assist the commissioners, and then we have the communications manager and the business analyst. So we have 5 staff members in the office, and our main job is to support and assist the county commissioners in everything that they need. We schedule all their meetings, we handle all their correspondence, we do analysis, we do a lot of support for the county commissioners. So that's pretty much what we do in our office. I can give you a list of tasks we do and who does what if you'd like. It's quite extensive, and it probably doesn't give you a fair enough view of how much work we do. It is quite extensive, but we have a great team that do support the county commissioners. So I'm available to answer any questions you have. So.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bill, do you have any questions?
Yeah, let me ask Mr. English, or Councilmember English, if I could. You offer kind of a unique perspective. You've served in an elected clerk position, and you're in an elected position where people under you are basically appointed. I think it was the same situation when you were at the school board. And I guess without getting into the technical side of, you know, how their managers are created and who's elected, just from your experience, where did you see the greatest efficiency in government? Accountability aside, just the things just seem to work better, whether it was a budget or providing funding for something, whatever the issue was.
Well, it's, of course, one thing, and I, seeing it over time, and we've had so much growth here that, one thing the county with the numbers and the three commissioners, and I think you're right that, if you went to 5 part-time, that'd be 5, we're almost working full-time or something, because there is a big job, but I do like the format of the cities with have an elected mayor who's the top person and the council people, and again, I'm a firm believer and support the elected folks, but then most cities do hire a professional manager, and we have a city manager and there, and it's very clear. Nobody is confused about what the city manager can do versus what the mayor can do. No single, and where it's kind of different, it's the batch of council members aren't like the row officers at the county, because each, when I was clerk, there were different things that I had budget authority over and certain things, whereas with council, just like actually the Board of Commission, one single council member or one single commissioner doesn't have authority to do anything on their own, but it's as the group. So, I think with that, with a bit of a larger board and all that, I think you do get, some efficiency. The main thing is, and where I've seen, again, is you need people, a lot of times the elected officials and different things, I mean, you grow into it, and I didn't know how to be clerk when I first got there, but I learned a lot and was involved in the election process and all of that. But frankly, if I had not, what I really depended on was my long-term department head who did have qualifications and education. So, whatever process you have, you want to make sure that you've got those good folks who are able to give the input, and so, I don't know, probably.
Thank you very much.
Jones?
Yes, Dan, you mentioned that you were in favor of possibly a county manager, but I don't think Jill or Leanne offered an opinion on that one way or the other, so I'd like to hear from both of you whether you think that would be advantageous.
Okay. So as far as a county manager, I understand that there's two different versions of this. There's one that oversees the elected officials, and then one that just kind of handles the BOCC tasks and manages that way. For us personally, in our office, I do see an advantage to having the manager assisting the commissioners. There's a lot of administrative tasks that go on in the commissioner's office that are overwhelming, and several commissioners have mentioned, I've worked for 9 county commissioners. Several commissioners have mentioned that it's difficult to get your job done when you have day-to-day tasks that are consuming all of your time. So I have heard that complaint and understand that it probably would be helpful for the commissioners to have somebody in that position to assist them with the day-to-day activities, whether that be just tasks that are assigned, whether it be they now oversee department heads and take that whole department head, and this is the BOCC department heads, the 17 departments that the commissioners oversee is what I'm speaking, not department heads as far as elected officials. To do that, I believe that would be beneficial, maybe to oversee our staff, and that would free up time for the commissioners, whether it's 3, 5, 7, whatever, time to do their statutorily obligated tasks or projects or long-term planning or coding or whatever it is that they have on their list of things that they need to get done. That would free up time so that they could do that. So, but we also have commissioners who've come in and are able to do everything. They're able to manage all of the day-to-day business, and they're able to do projects also. I've seen both. The majority are not able to do both. It's really unusual to have somebody in there who is dedicated enough to put the time in to manage the administrative portion and have time to do projects also. So from my point of view, I feel that that would be beneficial because for me, my job is to help the county commissioners and to assist them with whatever they need. And from my point of view, I see that they could use some assistance. And I know that there's been some discussion about being able to speak to other county commissioners and exchanging ideas. Well, you're not permitted to do that. That is not allowed unless you're in an open meeting. If there was a manager, that might alleviate that. That might be a person to bounce some ideas off of and share ideas and get information from. So that might help alleviate the, I don't have anyone to talk to about this unless we're in a meeting. So that might help in that instance. So from just looking at my department, that would be something that would definitely help. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Jill?
I guess, so do I think that having some sort of consistency and support is important? Yes. I'll go to Snohomish County. Snohomish County Council, every councilman has a legislative aide. There are either 3 or 4 legislative analysts, each with a different area of expertise. So they sort of, Nancy is 4 of them rolled into one. So there might be someone whose specialty is finance and someone whose specialty is policy. So even when they come in new, they oftentimes bring their own legislative aide. They bring someone from their past, but they've got support, and they've got the legislative analysts who give the continuity and have the ability when something comes up to break it down and explain why, yeah, I know this makes no sense, but in fact, we actually have to do it. I think that's very useful because that's a hard lesson to learn when you come into an office that you're not familiar with, is there are all kinds of things that don't make any sense at all, but we still have to do them. So I do think there's value in a position like that. I think you would just have to be very careful because they're being hired and fired by the board that they serve. I don't know how you'd navigate sometimes I'm gonna have to disagree with you and not worry about losing my job. I mean, I know I've seen counties where they go through a planning director every 2 years, and it's because the planning director tells the commissioners they can't develop something or they can't do something because in law they can't, and the commissioners get mad and they fire them. And then within the next 2 years, they have the same conversation with the new planning director. So you want to avoid being in a situation like that where you're losing the consistency, because sometimes you have to tell people things they don't want to hear.
Yeah. And Joan, can I add just one thing? So when we have county commissioners, I think the commissioners come in with different ideas of what the job entails and how much time will be spent on their job. If we have a person coming in and is fully devoted and giving 100%, we've had commissioners who've worked 40 to 60 hours a week getting a lot of work done. We've had other commissioners who come in and just want to work part-time. It doesn't state that they're full-time or part-time, so, and we cannot really dictate. So those who want to put in the time, it's a lot of time, they can get a lot of the work done. It's hard. But then we also have the commissioners, and like I said, I've worked for 9, who don't want to work full-time and feel it's a part-time job. And so with those ones, you have not as much is accomplished and projects are not completed. So as far as the manager goes, those who are working the 40 to 60 hours a week probably don't need a manager. Those who only want to work part-time are going to need some assistance. And we don't know that when they come in. We don't know that before they're voted in, and we don't really know that until they start working. So the staff is usually surprised.
Can I add one more thing? I would say if you go the route of 5 part-time commissioners, which I completely disagree with, not that it matters. I think at that point it would be more important to have a city manager, because you need someone who's there from 8 to 5,
Yes.
Monday through Friday.
Yes.
And if none of the commissioners are necessarily going to be there, you need to have someone
Yes.
that can keep things going.
That is absolutely true. We always need somebody in the office.
You need someone who can tell you yes or no.
Yes.
And if I could add to a couple of thoughts. One thing, I wanted to make sure, while I support county manager, and I guess under the different options, so I would not go for, electing, and, I would purposefully make sure, they don't want to be seen as a strong man or woman manager, rather, like I said, they're not the county czar. They're, in some of our other worlds, we think of, it's more of a leadership by servanthood and assisting people than, trying to take that. One of the things, and I don't know how your public meetings run and stuff, but one of the things that I've really found helpful, like in our council meetings, and we have public comment, and, I know that Troy Thomason, our city manager, works on big projects and all that, but there will be something in a council meeting that somebody comes up and they've got an issue with frankly, the barking dog and a neighbor, or some kind of a, ordinance, something, and in the meeting, the mayor will assign Troy, the manager, says, look, would you get with Troy after this meeting and be able to give them some kind of customer service right on the spot with the guy who can know the people to follow up, and that, in terms of responsiveness to the citizens, again, I think that it can just give you an extra level of that, which is a good thing. So,
Bruce?
Yes, my question is for,
Thank you. My question is for Mr. English. In your opening statement, you used the word "if" a lot. If we can find the right person, and if they can do the right job, and so forth. And I take it you kind of prefer this county manager with the hired positions underneath the county manager?
no, I guess if I wasn't clear on that, so, no, I think that the elected officials at the county should stay elected officials.
So you like the county manager and then the elected officials all at the
Yes,
same
they're
level?
still elected, the clerk runs the clerk departments and the
Okay.
treasurer, but the county manager would be, they'd be attached to the commission, but I would see, hopefully, they could be in a role like the IRS legal services, although that's under the prosecutor, but the human resource that would assist them, but no, again, for that reason, various reasons, I think the electeds, they have a history, and I think should stay that way, but it could be it could be better. And it could do a better job for people with a different combination. So, and you've got a lot of options to play with, so.
To more like what Sheriff Norris mentioned last week, where the BOCC has a manager, but that manager works with the other department heads, the other elected
I
officials.
wasn't here to hear that, but that's what, I'd be on that same wavelength, yeah.
Okay. Well, then I don't have any questions.
I do. Thank you all for coming and taking the time. And this is also for Mr. English. You mentioned that the government is not like a business. And that analogy has been made multiple times. In your opinion, could you state the reasons that they are different?
Well, they are like I think that government should run as much as you can in a business-like manner and function, and especially when you get into fiscal issues and all of that. But at the same time, it's different than a business because, frankly, there's a lot of things that the local governments are called upon to do that in the business world, you wouldn't do it. They're loss leader. You lose money on them and all of that. But we are in the people service building. It's not our job to worry about. It is our job to worry about the bottom line in terms of we make a budget, we better live in it. But it's not our job, our motivation to create, to maintain the most profit, so to speak, that we can. But things like it's wonderful. The county, under the clerk, you're, so to speak, the stuff I know, but with the recorder, the kinds of things that, people can, get all of their records. We do have to have that repository of the records, but it's also, wonderful that, the kinds of things that they can do, and now combined with technology where, people in, real estate industry, they can look up deeds and all this and that. There are a lot of things that the government functions do that cost money that aren't about, necessarily the fiscal bottom line. Now, if you got to do it, or like our county assistance program, which was also under the clerk. Now, and we are charged with, you've got to do certain things, you've got to pay for it, and you can't control all of that, although there is, they have guidelines you go by and all of that, and so I guess that's my sense of, kind of pros and cons. And again, most of my world has been in the nonprofit world where, again, the accounting for governmental accounting is much more like a nonprofit than the straight, business accounting. And again, you're not in the, you're not pleasing the shareholders. Well, you're hopefully pleasing the voters who pay the bills. But so that's my, yeah, sure.
Bryant, any questions?
You've, I think, all in some sense or another spoken in favor of a county manager type position. The type that you've spoken of, is there any reason why the Board of Commissioners cannot now simply create a position like that and hire someone to do those functions that you've outlined?
In my opinion, they could do it now. They did it before. And I think that some of the, way back then, and I don't know if you've probably researched how many other counties, have a county manager. And at that time, there was like one or two, like Twin Falls or maybe Burley or something. But, unless something's changed, I don't think there's anything prohibiting that now. But if they were going to do it, they really, really need to work with, in my opinion, the other elected so that everybody, even if you can't come to the exact same, agreement, at least they know what's going on. And
They've been part of the decision-making.
yeah. But anyway, somebody more than me might be able to spell if you can really do it or not.
So that isn't, and Leanna and Jill, if you have anything you'd want to add to that? Or?
No, I believe they can do that if they wanted to do that.
Okay.
Now, not recently, a few years ago, hired a new HR director, and that was a joint elected official effort. Elected official or their deputy was part of the entire process. And together, they all came together and hired an HR director, and everyone is thrilled with that. And it's great. I think that's a great way to do it. Everyone had a part and a say in it, and it's worked out great. So I would envision maybe something similar to that. Somebody that everybody would agree is a benefit to the county and somebody everybody likes.
One thing I would add to that, though, is that, I believe in elections. And I think the public believes in elections. And yeah, they might have the authority to do it now, they did it before. But in my mind, the difference between if some current, board, current or former, future, decides to go hire a county manager and they just do it on their own, even if they talk to the other elected officials, that's one thing. But if you get the public, the majority of the voters in Kootenai County who at some point said, yes, we endorse, approve, bless the idea of a county manager, this is where they can go, this is where they can't get into and all of that, but that the public has, bought off and endorsed it, that's what I think is really important, and then that's really gonna set them up for success versus just a current board of 3 people that says we're gonna do it again.
All right, thank you.
Brian, any questions?
Mr. English, you mentioned that if a county manager was hired, first of all, it wouldn't be elected, it'd be hired and using the existing form of government, if I understood you correctly. The recommendation would also be that position kind of be seated within the commissioner's office, right?
I think it makes sense, yeah.
And then I also heard some observation about, where the HR director was hired. It was a collaborative input effort from all elected officials. And would you see something like that working in this instance as a construct for hiring a county manager? All electeds come together to just kind of have an input, and would that extend to decisions about who to hire?
Right, I think that the elected officials would be more receptive if they were part of the process.
Right.
And it's 2 different things, right? One of the things is the hiring process, which it would be great if that could be collaborative. I don't think you could have the county manager reporting to both the commissioners
Right.
and
No.
the electeds.
Right, no, I was just talking about the hiring process.
Right.
Okay.
Having them involved. You think that would create a more harmonious way of bringing in a manager?
Yes.
Because then they might be able to define the position description.
Right.
Highlight the areas where do not tread versus areas where, they felt it more appropriate for that manager to operate, right?
And hopefully on the interview, if you put together and had a pool of candidates and then you make up your interview committee, 1 or 2 of the other elected, some department had some regular county
That's
staff.
exactly how we did it. For the HR director, that's exactly, and a representative from every elected official was part of the interview process.
So a question, no, well, wait a second, I won't be on my one question. I'll go the next round.
Okay.
How's that?
Dave, any questions? Dave, can you hear me? Dave must have stepped away from his computer for the moment.
I think he's.
Kurt, any questions? Kurt, any questions?
Unless they're all muted or something.
Okay. Kristen, any questions?
No.
Is Sherry there? Is that what I'm seeing? Nancy, is Sherry up there also?
Through.
Can you hear us now, Dave?
Oh.
We're speaking.
Now we
You
got
guys
you.
can't hear us.
Now we got you. Let's start again. Dave, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Kurt, any questions?
Yes, a question for Dan. Since you have experience in both county and city government, we've had a variety of testimony and input from people endeavoring to make comparisons between the two and draw lessons from one and apply it to the other. Is that valid in your experience, or is county a significantly different beast than the city?
I think that there's, a number of things that are the kind of the same, like, how you deal with people and, so there are some things that are the same, but some things that are distinctly different, by design and by code and by function. The county, county has a sheriff, city, larger city has a, chief of police and all of that. But the city doesn't have a lot of the other structure, and they're not mandated, like the assessor, the recorder, nobody's out, measuring how much your house is worth, or, we don't have a recording department at the city where they come in and do things. So there was some, and it was drawn up that way, in the original Constitution. There was definitely some specialization of different functions. So while there's a lot of overlap, there are also some real differences. So no, you can't, exactly put one and match it to the other.
So would a comparison of a city manager to a county manager position be valid or not valid, given those sorts of distinctions?
Oh, I think in that case, I think it would be, at that level, I think it's quite valid that they, that again, and also I'd throw into the mix somewhat like the school superintendent. You've got the board and all of that, and but then there is a hired executive who has specific training. Now with school board, they've got some credentialing, but yeah, I think at their level there would be a lot more in common than, say, what a city councilman does or the county commissioner. One thing that I think if the county had a manager, I'm guessing, I have to admit I don't know for sure, but I think that like our city manager has a lot of interaction with the City of Post Falls manager and stuff. Yeah, probably the Rapture. If there was a county manager, just like you mentioned at the, because I was on some of those national things, and there was some real benefit of that broader network of things. So I think at the manager level, they could do it. And, sometimes just thinking of it quick, way back when I was clerk, actually the commissioners used to meet on a regular basis with the different cities, and that was a wonderful time, and it went away for some reason. But so I think electeds could do better on that front too, but I'm getting off track.
Okay, thank you.
Sherry, is that you up there? Do you have any questions?
Yes, I'm here, and I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Kristen, I don't know whether we can hear you on the phone. Do you have any questions? I'll take silence as nothing. Bob, do you have any questions?
Jill, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. You commented that concerning having 5 commissioners could very easily develop into all of them working. They should be part-time, going full-time because of the workload. Do you stick to that with a manager as we've discussed?
I still believe that there will be, because there are people that run for office, especially commissioner, because they have a passion about their community. And I think if you're in that position, even if it's supposed to be part-time for an organization the size of ours and with the complexity of ours, that it would be very easy to work full-time, whether you were supposed to be part-time or not. If you're trying to meet with your constituents, if you're trying to show up at the meetings, it would be very easy, because it's not a 9-to-5 job. You're meeting with people before you come in, you're meeting with people during the day, you have public meetings during the day, you sometimes have public meetings, in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening. And to me, it would be very hard to also work a job or to own a business. So it's two things, right? I think even if you're calling it part-time, is it fair to call it part-time when you have to be on call, 12 hours a day? And the second part is, I think that you would still end up with, you'd end up with some people working less than part-time.
A lot of those things you just listed are not alleviated by having a professional executive.
No, but the difference to me, whether you call them a county manager or a county administrator, is right now, we have board members and we elect them, the citizens elect them because they want representation. And they want policies set that they agree with, right? That's why they choose who they elected. When you're managing 17 departments, even though those departments have department heads and they're expert at what they do, right now, I think the commissioners spend time managing 17 department heads. If there was a county manager or administrator, in theory, the commissioners would manage that administrator or manager, and that person would manage the 17 department heads. And so that would free up the commissioners' time to do the thing that they were elected to do.
You know, one clear example that just kind of came to me is, like now, I don't know if the elected officials do, I mean, if in your HR, if they have annual reviews of, say, department heads, and do the elected officials do those department heads or whatever, but if you had a county manager, then those top-level department heads, those reviews and stuff should be done by by the same person. You'd have that kind of consistency, and again, then you get just a deeper professional track on things. So.
Yeah. Yep. Did that answer the question?
Thank you. And I want to say that I appreciate you folks showing up and helping us out like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Phil?
Let me ask this to Dan, but if the two of you have an opinion on it, also I'd appreciate. I know that the county has certain functions set by statute. You have to have a coroner, you have to have an assessor, you have to have a treasurer, whatever. But these functions, although housed in unincorporated of the county, are county-wide. So the city, as a separate entity, is still providing the information to the county for its tax purposes, for all the services. And I believe there are 44 counties, I'm not sure the exact number here in Idaho, and that they all, or all but two, I don't recall the number, operate under the commission form of government. Basically, 3 commissioners and 5, 6, depending on the county, elected officials. Yet, I don't have any city that was part of the counties at one time and then broke off to become a city, opted for the commission form of government. They all went for, in fact, across the country, that's the case. Most cities across the country have gone to a county manager form. Now, with your knowledge of both, why do you think no one opted to go into the commission form in these different cities as they were being created, when that's what they knew, that's what they're familiar with?
Well, and I'm not getting out of my area of expertise. The cities were created under distinct other sections of the code and for different things. So I don't think, and I'm just that was a matter of like cities broke a corner of Kootenai County, for instance, broke off at some point in the way past it and became a city. I think they've been, separate structures from the get-go with different, statutory functions and authorities. And, and you have to, to be clear, cities, there are some overlaps of things, but cities are not many counties in the sense that, there's a lot of the function that the counties do and responsibilities that they have, and like the, triggered my, Board of County Commissioners at a point, they, all of a sudden the same 3 people are Board of Equalization, they also, with other counties, they then can assume some joint powers agreement. So it's a much broader, deeper thing than the city. So they're real different entities. And
Before I go to you, Joan,
Thank you.
Dan, I realize the time is pressing for what
Yeah,
you gave
probably
us.
about
If
that,
you need to
but
take off, do so
I,
whenever you have to,
yeah,
but thank you
and,
very much.
Thanks everybody who came. It was actually I have to say I'm kind of an old political and election kind of a nerds, I like this stuff. And I do, for the folks, I really do think we can do better. We don't do a bad job now, but I think there are some things that could be better. So I really hope that the fruits of your labor here and the public that apparently came to meetings and all of that their time pays off. So anyway, I'm off to the redistricting mapping committee. So thanks. See
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I hope your question wasn't for Dan Joan, if you have any questions.
I have no further questions.
Bruce?
That's hilarious.
Yes. It's interesting because this isn't the first time before this commission that guests have suggested that the BOCC can hire a manager without changing the form of government. In some respects, it's almost troubling. But I just want to ask, if you want to answer, why do you think this commission is here tonight, meaning this study commission is here if the BOCC has not exhausted all of its options beforehand?
I would be willing to answer that. And again, I'm not in the mind of the BOCC. I would guess it's because that's one option that's available that they could do unilaterally, we think, right? But are they serving the citizens of Kootenai County if they make that decision without engaging the citizens of Kootenai County through you and this commission to try and figure out whether that is the best option or whether there's another option that would be better and would better serve our citizens? I mean, that would be my guess. They're just getting more information.
Well, we could hire a manager and at least try it beforehand. I mean, it's not it doesn't sound like it's really that challenging.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I believe that's true, what Jill said, that I believe the board just wants to just have this commission explore all the options and bring forth the recommendation to see what is the best option for the county to help alleviate some of the problems that have happened over the years. And I don't know if they thought that a manager, just hiring a manager would be the best option, or if they thought, yes, that is an option, but let's explore all of the options.
Well, it sounds like they just don't really think that's a good option, because why would they trust people who aren't in the job to make a recommendation for them?
Right.
When both of you have said, yeah, if they had a manager, it would sure make life a lot easier. And I'm sure both of you could say that to them. So to me, that doesn't really kind of fit.
Yeah.
The puzzle pieces don't fit in that respect.
And I work for the commissioners. They didn't come out and talk to staff and say, we are going to do this, what do you think? Or this is what we're doing. This was a discussion with the commissioners and they decided this. So we're not really privy to what it was that was the tipping point that brought about the commission. I think it's fascinating. I think we've all learned a lot about county government. I've learned a lot just reading some of your minutes, things I didn't even know. I think the public is better informed what the county does. So if nothing else comes of it, I think it's a great educational experience. But I'm really interested to see what you all come up with.
Yeah. Well, the recommendation to change the structure of our government has huge implications.
Sure.
It's not something that you just go, oops, we made a mistake
Right.
and we just roll it back.
Right.
So that's why I'm just surprised that they haven't exhausted their other options
Well, I do
before
think they
putting
tried
a
that.
commission together.
I believe they tried that with Mr. Taggart, and I wasn't here when he was here. I don't know why he isn't still here or why there isn't that position still. I know you interviewed him. I did not see that interview. So I don't know how long he was even the manager. I don't know. I don't know how that all worked out.
Okay, well, thank you.
And this change will not impact anyone more than our office. So it will be really interesting to see what you all come up with, because our office, our staff will be the most impacted by your decision, because we are the support staff for the commissioners. And so we're very interested to know what you all come up with. So I believe you're going to be interviewing some more staff, and anything we can do to help you. If anybody wants to come into the office and observe, you are welcome to come in, and we are happy to show you around, show you how things operate. So.
Thank you.
Tamara, questions?
I do, actually, and this is for Jill, kind of along the same lines of they are able to hire a county manager. You mentioned that in your previous experience that electeds had brought over legislative aides and analysts. Is that something that they can also currently do without any, I mean, what is the involvement? Is that just a budget issue, or how would that work?
I would imagine that would be a budget issue. I don't know that in the end, it's support staff. So I don't think that they outline in statute. They may outline that each council member, as part of the charter, they may have allowed each council member a legislative aide, which is sort of like their own, depending on the council member, what the person in that seat did looked very different. So, for one council member, it might be their executive assistant. For another council member, it's more of a chief deputy. The legislative analysts served all of the council, and they stayed. It took agreement, like a majority agreement to, well, anyway, they stayed. So they were there as council members go in and go out.
But can they hire those assistants now?
I would imagine that they could.
Because we haven't, I don't think that's come up, I don't remember, but when you mentioned that was just another interesting opportunity that they have possibly before them. So, thank you.
Bryant, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Brian, you had something else? No? Dave, any questions?
I just wanted to confirm with Leanna, when you talk about the manager, do you see that person having all the 17 departments reporting into it, or just as a coordinator, but have these 17 remain reporting to the county commissioners?
I think that would be determined by the job description, but currently the 17 different departments are divided amongst the commissioners. They are the liaisons for each of those. It does take a good amount of time, so that would probably be a good thing for a manager to oversee. It would free up some commissioner time. As long as the manager and the commissioners are meeting on a regular basis to communicate issues and solve any problems, I think that would work. Right now, like I said, we have all of these departments divvied up between our 3 commissioners. So, yeah, that would be an option. But again, that would be determined by the job description that's written up as to whether or not that's an option.
But you see that as a
Yep.
a potential benefit if the 17 had continuity of one person versus 3 different individuals.
Yes, and I can tell you that one of the hardest things when we get new commissioners is for the department heads. They each individually meet with their new liaison and pretty much have to give them a whole history of their entire department. And when you have this many departments, so each commissioner would meet with, say, 5 department heads. Some department heads manage more than one department. And that is a challenge for the department heads to meet with the commissioners and give them the full background of their department. Having a manager who's consistent would probably be a little easier for the department heads.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt, did you have any questions?
Yes, for Leanne, I was interested in your perspective on the viability of somebody functioning in a part-time role as a commissioner to be adequately informed. Mm-hmm. Matters that they need to make decisions about. It's been raised in previous input that we got that it may not be feasible to stay well-informed on a part-time schedule.
And I've heard that before, and I think it just depends on the person. And we get a variety of people who are commissioners, a variety of personalities and ideas of what they think the job is and time commitments. So it depends on how committed they are. It would be a little challenging for a part-time person to be up on everything. It would probably require a meeting with the manager on a weekly basis to kind of get up to speed on everything. I don't know how else they would know everything. The office is very, very busy. We have a lot of activity coming through. The manager could possibly kind of screen some of the administrative issues that have come through the office, things that the commissioners don't need to know, and just limit it to what they do need to hear. So that would be an option too. But that is also, in my mind, kind of a challenge. I know Jill had mentioned part-time versus full-time. I'm not really certain on that. If you get full-time people, that's great. You have people who are committed. But if you have people who have to give up their job to now be a full-time commissioner, that's a challenge, because you might only be in that job for 2 years. And that is tough. Part-time, I do tend to think you'll be a little distanced from everything. So that's kind of a challenge also. So I haven't really made up my mind on what is better. Full-time, part-time. It might be easier to find people who are willing to work part-time, because they could keep their full-time jobs and do this too. However, we do have a very unique schedule with the commissioners. We have talked about combining meetings or consolidating meetings to certain days, maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we do all of our meetings on those days to help facilitate something like that. We're pretty flexible with what we can do with our schedule. So if it came down to it and we only had part-time people, we could certainly adjust the schedule to make it work. But we do have meetings early in the morning. We do have hearings in the evening. Commissioners are required to be at hearings. They're required to be in the office for Board of Equalization, which is 2.5 weeks of solid hearings. So that might be a challenge for somebody who's only working part-time. So those are kinds of the things that we'd have to work out, think through. Does that answer? Okay.
Sherry, do you have any questions?
No, I do not, but I want to thank you ladies for coming and presenting to us and for your dedication. Thank you.
And I know Kristen is having some problems being heard. She has said she is participating, listening to everything, but she is unable to communicate with us in verse. So she won't be asking any questions right now. Bob, any questions?
No, that's it. That's it for me. Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you both.
You're
Very
welcome.
informative, really very helpful.
Good.
Joan?
Okay.
No more
No.
questions. Thank
Okay.
Bruce?
Just real quick, I'm sorry, because
That's okay.
I skipped on the first one here. I've talked to a lot of people about this new form of study or government study commission. And they always ask me what's wrong with our current form of government and its structure. And since the both of you are inside government as opposed to outside looking in, I want to ask you, what exactly is so wrong with the current structure that we need to change it?
So I only work in the commissioner's office, so I can tell you that probably the biggest challenge we have is the lack of time to actually get done what needs to be done. That is probably our biggest issue. If we had 3 full-time commissioners who worked excessive amounts of time or put in a lot of time, we could probably get everything done. But not everybody, and not every past commissioner or future commissioner is gonna wanna do that. I think the administrative tasks in our office is overwhelming. And that, I think, is causing a lot of backlog and bottlenecking, and is not permitting the commissioners to do things that they would like to do. Some, I'd mentioned before, some strategic planning, some long-range planning hasn't always been done because there isn't enough time to do that. Yes, the commissioners get all their mandated tasks done. We do everything. We do all the hearings. We do all the appeals for assessments. We do the budget. They get it all done. But it's a challenge to get anything done beyond that, to do anything more, any projects or any big things that need to be done. So I think that's a problem. That's been a repetitive problem I've heard from the commissioners, that they're just getting overwhelmed with the day-to-day activities. It has helped. We've taken a few departments away from the commissioners, kind of reallocated them. The Human Resources Department is now under the prosecutor. That helped immensely. That was a very time-consuming department to have under the commissioners. The Office of Emergency Management was under the commissioners, now under the sheriff, which is great, especially now with COVID. If that had been under the commissioners, that's probably all we would be doing, is managing the COVID emergency. Right now, it's all under the sheriff, and they've been managing it, and that's been very helpful. And there are, I think Lori Thomas had mentioned, maybe moving some other departments out from under the board and putting them other places. I think other counties do that, have done that. If you look at the structure of other counties, some departments are not lined up exactly where ours are. So that might be an option too. But I think just not efficient because of the volume of calls and emails and administrative tasks. Constituents they want to talk to their commissioners. So we let them talk to their commissioners. And so it's just a lot of administrative work.
So it's inefficiency on their part.
Yeah, and we have actually streamlined a lot of the processes that we do. We've taken our administrative staff from 4 to 3, and then added an analyst and added a communications manager to help with some of those, and that's been great. We have removed a lot of the tasks in our office that were not really our office's function, and kind of cleaned up. We still have a lot of work to do, but that's mostly the administrative things. The commissioners, they still get the calls. They still get a lot of emails, a lot of questions. People just want to talk to the commissioners, so they spend a lot of time doing that. I don't see that really ever stopping, even if there was a manager. The commissioners are always open to talking to their constituents. But the other tasks, the ones that we do in our office and need to have somebody there to authorize things or sign things, that I think is what's bogging them down. We do have a new system being put in place. We're training right now and building it now to hopefully help streamline some more processes in our office, electronic signatures for the commissioners to help facilitate some of that for them. They get stacks and stacks of documents to sign. And so we are working on it. It's taken a while. I've been in the office for 3 years. We've made a lot of changes. We made changes before when I was in the office the first time, mostly for staff, trying to streamline things to make it better for commissioners. And but we're trying to do the best we can, the most we can, to try to help them and support them. But I don't know that I'd say it's inefficient. It's things that have always been done, and so we're kind of evaluating what we do and trying to make it better. just trying to be more efficient with our time and
Well,
their
if you-
time.
If you're trying to be more efficient, that means it's inefficient as it is,
Yeah,
so.
and we inherited it that way. So we're
Mhm.
trying to fix things that maybe haven't been done the best way. But it takes a long time because there's a lot of things that we're trying to look at, so, yeah. Jill?
So I've now worked in 3 different forms of government. I actually like this one the best. It's a little different because in the other counties I worked at, there was an elected executive rather than a county manager. And what I saw was there was just a lot of struggle between the 2 branches, because now you have an executive branch and a legislative branch, and they're sort of fighting for power. So I like this form better than that. I don't think having a manager changes the form of government. You know, it's adding in support staff. I come from a process improvement background. One of my team members is here. She can attest to that. They might feel like they've been hit by a train. But, you know, one of the things that you look at is you want all of your employees, everyone that's working for the county, you want them working at the higher end of their job description. You don't want them working at the lower end. So you don't want to pay someone with a CPA and have them filing papers, because you're not getting the best value for your money. You know, having additional support to take care of some of the more like process related work, so that the commissioners could focus on the work that they're actually elected to do, and, you know, remove some of the, as you say, administrative inefficiencies, because you've got people who, this isn't what they do and they're doing it, so they're not gonna be as good at it as someone who, that's what they do, right? Maybe that would help, but I really think that the government structure that we're using functions very well. And if you look in Washington, you know, 5 counties are charter counties. It's Pierce County, which is the 2nd largest county, King County, the largest county, Snohomish County, the 3rd largest county, Thurston, which is Olympia, and then Whatcom County up in Bellingham. Other counties aren't jumping on board because they want to now be charter counties too, right?
Well, thank you. I have to say one thing, though. I'd love to be a fly on the wall with you in the room and the other commissioners having that debate.
The good thing is, I don't work for them.
That's right.
I do. This is for Leanna. Kind of going on the same thread of the workload and all of that. You did mention that, well, I interpreted it that part of it is that they come into the job with maybe not a correct understanding of the workload or what the job is entails, and therefore that is causing some of the problems. Was I hearing that correctly?
And that could be, I think a lot of times they come in not realizing that it may not be exactly, it's not what you read in statute. It's not just that. It's that plus a lot more. There's a lot more that happens in our office besides what's written in the statute. Yes, we get everything done that's in the statute, but we also do a lot of more work in our office. We process a lot more things that are not specified clearly in the statute. It may be more supportive, maybe more assisting other departments with whatever they need to help them get through a process that they need to get through. So it's helpful when we have people attending meetings, a lot of meetings, prior to becoming a commissioner, because that, I think, is good. It does help open their eyes to the variety of things that the commissioners do, as opposed to just the budget and the Board of Equalization and the hearings, and it's not just that. There's a lot more. So yes, I do think people come in and not realize. And it takes a long time to learn how to be a commissioner here. I figure it takes, because some things we only do once a year. Mm-hmm. We may do something once a year, one time, or for 2 weeks out of the year, or for, however long. It really takes a solid 2 years for a commissioner to have a good grasp of everything, having gone through, the first time, you don't know the budget. It's very difficult to go through the first time. Second time, okay, we have a better handle on it. So for staff, it's very frustrating when we have commissioners come in for 2 years and then not be reelected, because you've spent 2 years getting them up to speed, and then you have a new one and you have to start all over. So the 4 years is very helpful. This last election cycle, we were actually relieved that we didn't have to do any training. It's very unusual that we don't have to train a new commissioner, and that happened this last time, which freed up a lot of staff time, which was great. It was very appreciated.
So if a commissioner comes in with a greater grasp of what would be entailed, would that then negate having a county commissioner? Would that still be helpful? Would, it seems
manager,
like,
you mean?
county manager,
Manager?
yeah, sorry.
No,
That make any difference?
There's still a lot of work. It's
Okay.
still a lot of work. We have a current commissioner who came to, I believe, 100 meetings prior to being elected, and still spent 40 to 60 hours a week for 2 years. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of reading. There's a lot of things to read prior to making a decision. You can't just read a contract and agree. You have to read the background. You have to read the support documents. There's a lot of reading. Our business meeting this week had almost 800 pages of support documentation for one 30-minute meeting.
Wow.
And the board is required to read all of that and ask questions, and that's a lot of documentation for one meeting. And so the community development meetings, the hearings, there's a lot of documentation that goes with those, a lot of maps, a lot of, just a lot of communication that has to go on that they need to understand before they make a decision, because you want them to get as much information as possible before they make a decision. If they come in and make a decision by not reading before they've read everything, that's not what we want. We want them to be well informed.
So a county manager then could then alleviate, you're saying a county manager could help with some of the administrative to allow them to have more time to be able to do the proper
Yeah.
setup, prep, whatever they need for their meetings.
The meetings that they're required to attend.
Correct.
Now, if there's other meetings, say there's an update meeting with the airport or solid waste department, the manager could attend those as opposed to the commissioners. The commissioners could maybe attend meetings where decisions need to be made, maybe just the business meeting, and all the decisions could be made in that one meeting, and other meetings that they don't have to attend could be handled by the manager. So just, that's just one way to do it. Right now, the county commissioners attend every meeting. We've had 12, 13 meetings in a week before. We've had a lot of meetings. This next week is nice. We only have a handful, but it isn't always like that. And there are a lot of meetings, and they can only discuss things in meetings. So they can gather information from outside, people and whatnot, but they cannot discuss it until they're in a meeting together. So that makes it hard to, just kind of talk to each other and come to a decision together. So they're required to be in a meeting.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Brian, questions?
No more questions. Thank you very much.
Brian?
No, thanks.
Dave, questions?
No, sir.
Kurt?
No, thank you.
Sherry?
No, thank you.
Bob?
No.
I'm good, thank you.
done.
Go for it, Tamara.
That's okay.
I will make it really quick. You mentioned that your office would be the most impacted if any change were to occur. Can you explain what those impacts would be?
Well, if we we elected 2 more county commissioners, we would have 2 more bosses. Right now I have 3 bosses. I would have 5 bosses. Our entire staff would have 5 bosses. We would make some changes. Some things would be different. And I don't believe that the amount of work would increase necessarily, but there would, as far as volume of work, but there would be more, It would be a little more challenging for the staff to coordinate. Right now, we need 2 signatures on everything, every document for approval. We would need 3 signatures. We would need another person. We would need a body there. So it would be a little different. We would need to make room for 2 more people, or 4 more people if we went with 7. I've actually brought in our building and grounds department and asked them, how can we fit more people in this space? If that's what happens, what do we do? So we actually have a plan in place if that happens, and an estimate of how much that would cost and how we would rearrange our office and our staff, because we're not moving out of our office, so we would have to use the space we have. If we had a manager, that would change a lot, because the tasks would be done different. They wouldn't go to the commissioners for certain approvals. They would go to the manager. The manager would be the person meeting with department heads or meeting with our staff. It would be different.
So some structural changes, logistics.
Physical changes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do believe that a manager would actually take some of what I do, some of what our communications manager does, and some of what our business analyst does. Would take a little bit of those jobs and probably be incorporated into the manager position, in addition to a lot of what the commissioners do. So,
thank you.
So we've been discussing the notion of not changing the form of government in that framework, but just hiring a manager within existing authority, and then how that might benefit existing operations. So I have 1 or 2 questions related to that, which is, given the statement you were making earlier, I think, Leanne, that if you had 3 full-time commissioners, as you do now, working constantly, that's enough to keep up with what is a very pressing administrative load.
yes.
But then on top of that, there are other things that fall into, for example, long-range planning that are perhaps not getting the attention that they ought to, because you're just making do with the things that are required by law. So if the county is growing, do those administrative functions that you're performing increase as well? I would assume that they are increasing at an ever-growing rate. With
Yes,
the
but
growth here.
not as much as you would think. I think the support departments are experiencing more of the challenges with the increase in population than our department is
Do you
specifically.
mean like licensing, motor vehicle licensing,
Yes,
things like that?
and building permits and visitors to our parks and our waterways, the increase in those, trash. We have a lot more trash and solid waste. So I believe that it's increasing the workload for our departments more than it's increasing our workload for our office. However, there are more problems. So, we do get requests for hiring more people because the other departments now need more staff.
I see,
So,
right.
but not an increase in workload, essentially, for us. But
So related to this, if there was a manager along the lines we're talking about, there's also, my understanding is the commissioners, they have lines of authority from the statute that say, for instance, on the checks that come in every week, they have to look at a big
Yes,
payroll
and
register or
approve.
whatever, and they have to read it and then sign off. That's their legal obligation to
Yes.
look at that. And that's not something that they can, by law, delegate to a manager, so.
well,
That's my understanding.
right, that cannot sign off on it. Our business analyst reviews our payables extensively every week, provides a report to the commissioners highlighting questionable things or things that maybe need a little bit of research, and gives that to the commissioners. And we didn't have that before we hired this analyst. the commissioners signed the payables every week, but didn't have the thorough review as it does now.
Things like that have helped. You had an initial
Yes, we
staff
have found a
member who can
lot
kind
of things that,
filter first
Yes.
and give them the condensed
right,
view.
because the commissioners don't have the time to go through. Our payables report is, pretty extensive
I
and,
did see it when Commissioner Filios was here. I think he
Yes.
held it up
yes.
along with some other
And it
things.
requires, some research to find out what those are. So our business analyst has been fantastic. It's been a great addition to the county. I believe she saved a lot of money, well worth the salary that we pay her. She's also the one that helped facilitate with the HR department the wage increases. And we wouldn't have had that if we didn't hire this person. So that is a function that possibly could be the manager if they have the analyst background, or we could keep our analyst and the manager could work together with the analyst and find things.
So I'm going to speak generally, but this notion of, the commissioners have certain things where it must be their authority to sign it.
Uh-huh.
But would you, in general, say a manager might help them in the way that they were
Yes.
working with these payroll
Yes.
reports or whatever to kind of filter through that stuff,
Yes.
highlight the things that are important
Yes.
to bring to their attention and say, this is important to focus on here. Here's
Right.
what I see. And then that helps them move through their day as commissioners
Right.
to so-called bigger and greater thinking, I suppose, in
Right,
their long-range
it's just like
planning.
having an assistant who helps you with your work, and that's what we try to do in our department, is help the commissioners make the best educated decisions they can in all of our different roles. We all provide information to the commissioners on various things. So,
So what gets me as I think through this and things that are concerned is just where that manager fits in the lines of authority, where the commissioners have the authority, but how does that manager fit in between that and the rest of the functions that are going on?
Right.
To provide a distilled view of things without filtering it in a biased way and
Right.
saying, this is an objective view of what the 800-page document says.
right, here are the
for you,
facts, yes.
And it's very hard, in my experience, to find a person like that to be that objective manager that does that.
Right,
Whether that be hired through the existing authority or through some separate form that
Right.
we pursue. It's a real talent search.
and I think that's why it would be important to work with all the elected officials. So all of the elected officials felt comfortable with this person and felt this person was, trustworthy, had great integrity, had the county's best interests in mind, was somebody that they could trust and work with, because they would have to work with the other elected officials. And we all try to work together as best we can. And so I think having somebody who understands the role, whatever the job description ended up being, they would need to understand what the role is, that they're, and if they're given authority to sign off on these 10 things without the commissioners, because maybe that's not something that is even the commissioner's role to do that. It's just been, over the years, has come to the commissioner's office, but maybe it doesn't need the commissioner's signatures. It can be somebody else, so.
That seems the reason why, if there was a decision that, don't change the form of government, let's just, within our existing power, hire a manager. The reason that you're talking about for getting more than just the commissioners involved in the conversation about what is the position description, the other lines, because I think they would help define what are the boundaries legally. Certainly the prosecutor's office could help with that, I would imagine. So that maybe there are things through habit and years have fallen into that category
Right.
where it just fell in the commissioner's lap. Like HR might have just always been there.
Right.
But somebody had the foresight to say,
Yeah.
maybe that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And maybe achieve efficiencies that way. I get very concerned about having a manager in between.
Yes,
The-
and I have heard that
Yeah.
also, yes.
and how do you make sure that is an objective, balanced
Yes,
role where the commissioners are still involved
right.
full-time, but they do their job better to their
Right.
higher function, which I thought was a really interesting comment you made. In fact, I have to compliment both of you on the level of analysis and just, experience that you have and brought to this conversation. It's really been, honestly, it's been very helpful.
Okay,
And thank you, both of you.
Brian, we skipped over you, anything?
No, thank you.
Dave?
No, thanks.
Kurt?
Nothing.
Sherry?
No, thank you.
Do we go round again, folks?
Round and round.
I looked right at you, yes.
That's okay.
But
Are
it
you
could have been
good?
either you or Bruce.
Okay.
Oh, no.
You're good?
No.
Okay, all good?
Ladies, we
Yes.
appreciate your help.
Thank you for
Thank you
having us.
very much.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
and if you have any further questions, please let us know. And like I said, if you want to come to the commissioner's office, let me know. You can come in.
Thank you.
bet.
You're also welcome to come to the treasurer's office if you want to know more about what we do.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Except not next week.
Not next week.
Moving on, the next item we have on the agenda is whether to bring Dave Childs in on October 13th. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna ask if we could take a quick 5 minute break.
Sure. Actually, usually 10's better, so we'll come back together at 7:35.
Thank you. Usually, guys, my age do that.
Sorry, Bruce. I used to do that, and I thought I got away from it, and I just started it
Well,
again.
it just depends on if Brian did something wrong, or if I did something wrong, and who you call Bruce.
At the moment, I don't think anybody's done anything wrong, but, there you go. I'd be down with that. Bringing in the question of interviewing David Childs. I'm sorry, Kristen is not here tonight, and she is unable to communicate with us. She's on the phone. She's out in the sticks somewhere in South Alabama, Georgia, wherever, and she's not really able to communicate with us. So I will speak to the idea from what she has told me, and that is that she believes that David can provide some information to complement the report that she has presented. She and Phil and Bob have been working on it. She believes David can provide some information to that and would like him to come in on the same night that she's giving her report to flesh out her report. Is that a way you understand it, Phil?
Yeah, it is. In fact, Kristen called me. She's down in Alabama. She happened to call me on the phone today. And I mean, to me, Dan English was good to hear because he felt been worked in the different systems. This Dave Childs, I did read his resume, a bio, what do you want to call it, and we're supposed to be studying different forms of government to make a decision if we do need to make any changes. But all we've listened to is people from the Commission Form of Government, other than Dan English, and there's someone who's worked as a county administrator, and I don't think he's ever been elected. I think he's always been in appointed positions. And in fact, he was a county manager in 5 or 6 different places. I just think it's worth to hear what he has to say to help us assess whether we think there is any benefit to a manager, whether it's hired or whether it's appointed or whether we don't need that. But I just think the information is what we're here for now, and we shouldn't cut anyone out who can provide new information.
And I'd like to second that. Having looked at his qualifications, I think that it looks like he can provide some good input to us, and I'd like to hear what he can say.
Yeah, this is Dave. I would, since Kristen has asked for him to come on, and she as well as a few others have been working on the research, if she thinks it's beneficial, I think out of respect for her, because she knows more than we do, at least I do anyway, it makes sense to invite him based on his background.
I also wanted to say something along that regard, because I was involved along with Phil.
Can you turn the volume down just a little over there? I'm getting a feedback over here.
Okay, that's pretty good, I guess. We've been talking a lot about a professional manager, and that alone indicates that it would be a good thing for us to do, but I think he'll give us a lot of good input in regard how he can work with some of the row officials who will not he won't be working directly, or they won't be taking orders from him, but working with row officials. And he's had some experience along these lines that I think we'll all find interesting and beneficial.
We're still getting feedback out here. And it's building.
You want to try turning that one off?
Was that coming to us?
It's coming to your speaker right above.
It is?
That's probably it.
Are the others off?
I think you've isolated the problem.
Yeah, it's me.
If you're attempting to address us, we have no audio. We lost it a little bit ago. We've been trying to raise information on the chat.
Interesting.
I don't know if you've lost all audio or just what we had over at that desk. Is it now fixed?
Still no audio for us.
Nothing? send him a chat, let him
Sounded
know
like he
what
was,
we've got.
oh, there you go. Oh,
There we go, you're back, okay.
thank you.
We're having problems with feedback here, trying to get things squared away. And I'm hearing an echo, so I am apparently the cause of the feedback. Yeah, we lose the feedback. if I
We're
turn
hearing
my
just
mic
little
on.
bits of the feedback as well, and I was guessing you were trying to fix that, but it cut the feed to us. There are two Board of County Commissioners connections into the Zoom, both of which have audio enabled, if that could help.
Let's try again. I'll try to speak a little
Now the
quieter.
connection
No.
with video muted, but we aren't hearing anything.
Am I going to get a feedback over here? No.
Still no audio on our end.
Okay.
Okay, it's back.
Okay. Any further discussion on bringing in Dave Childs?
I just want to make sure I understand that he's going to be presenting the same night as Kristen and.
Yes, basically as part of her report.
Okay.
Well, I have to say, I was on the fence until I saw on his resume that he had attended the 12th World Boy Scout Jamboree in Farragut State Park, so I say, bring him in.
There's a qualification for you.
Yep.
Well, it's on the resume.
You're like a kid.
Other comments? Tamara, do you?
Yeah,
looks like
I
you've got
do.
something?
I guess, can I look at this? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Most of his experience is a city manager, which I think has been stipulated would be different than a county manager. So are we gonna get, I mean, yes, he was a county manager for, in Nevada, but it's city manager, city manager, city manager. Most of it is city manager, so I'm not opposed to hearing what a city manager does, but again, we, I think, have heard enough that cities are different than counties. So I'm not opposed to having him come, I don't know how the city manager, his experience will be that much more beneficial. But I said from the very beginning, as many voices as possible, so bring him on.
Yeah, I'm not interested in his experience as a city manager, except as he can illuminate the difference between that and a county manager. But given that he has been a county manager and has worked with an association of city and county managers, I think he may be able to give us more insight as to how those roles would differ.
And to that extent, I think we can ask him to specify when he's working, talking to us, to stay with mostly the county manager issues rather than the city manager. Where there's a difference, he has both. Any further discussion, or can we go to a vote? Motion to bring him in with Kristen's report?
So moved.
Okay.
Aye.
We have 3 motions to do it. Can we consider one of them a second?
Who the motion?
Sure, whatever works.
David, who the motions?
I heard Kurt first.
Yes, I heard Kurt first.
Kurt made the motion, who seconded it?
Let Bob Fish second it. He's got his hand up.
Okay, thank you.
I'm ready to vote. Okay. Vote for bringing him in? Looks like that passes.
Aye.
Okay. Items for the next agenda, next meetings, next agendas. This is the 22nd of September. The 29th is our public comment meeting. What we had set before is the ground rules. We will go through the housekeeping to get things going. We will then turn this into a public comment. Public comments should be limited to 3 minutes per person. At 8 o'clock, we will adjourn and call it a night. Any discussion, any issues? This is what we discussed before, so I don't think there's anything new or issues.
What if we have just a few extra people who want to speak? Like 2, 3, 4, I mean, that's 12 minutes.
I think we would have to probably make that decision at the time.
At the time, okay.
I don't think we can make a decision now based upon what if, because we don't know what if's gonna be.
Well, yeah,
We
we've
could
got
have
still
nobody who wants
50
to
people.
speak, we could have 50 people who want to speak.
Correct. Okay.
So, one of the things that came up in this is the meetings for October 6th and 13th. Certainly.
Did we have any other changes we wanted to those guidelines I sent out? I think one person had
No,
suggested.
I thought that was a very
Hang
nice
on a second,
summation.
Kurt. Hang on a second, Kurt. Let her finish.
Oh, I think one person had some suggestions. I wanted to bring it to the group and see if there were changes that the group wanted.
Okay, Kurt, what would you say?
I said I reviewed the brochure. I thought it was a nice summation of the points.
What were the changes? There was just one email that we had talked about limiting to a certain number of people, or if we wanted to limit a certain number of people signing in.
I think we were limiting the number of people signing in to probably 60, anticipating probably only 50 would get in if we go 3 minutes per person.
Okay. Then we will leave with that.
Right, so sort of do airline booking so we can have a few extra people sign up and not everyone gets on the plane.
We can put them on will call.
So are we changing this to 60? A sign-up sheet at the door approximately, I guess we'll keep it at 50, okay.
I thought last week we were saying sign-up sheets at both doors, 25 on each sign-up sheet, total 60. Now, if somebody remembers differently, that's fine. Do we want to hold it to 50 total? I said 25 each door. I should have said 30 at each door. Do we want to hold it to 25 at each door, 50 only?
I think 30 is good, because there will
I
be
think
people.
Go ahead.
sign up the extra people.
We're all in agreement?
Yeah, not everyone's gonna spend their full 3 minutes.
Most people like to talk.
The other question I had is, are we going to have some sort of timing cue light that we can make use of to help people wrap up their comments within the time rather than just giving them the hook and turning off the mic?
If we can find a hook, we might try that, but normally, I believe the county commissioners have had a timing system lights.
We will have the stoplight from the community development meetings at our disposal.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, do you guys have a huge timer clock that actually shows, starts 3 minutes and then clicks on down so people can actually see how much time they're taking up?
We have a stoplight, and so typically we'll set at, 20 seconds or 30 seconds left. We'll go to yellow, start at green, go to yellow, and then red when your time is up.
Okay. It's good.
Okay, continuing the discussion, October 6th and 13th, we will still be taking testimony. The 13th will be Kristen's report and David Child's testimony. We've been asked to provide some support to Dave Levine since Nancy Jones will no longer be doing our minutes. Yes, you can cheer. Since she will no longer be doing our minutes, Dave has asked for some support. That request is still with the county commissioners. We haven't got a response back at this point, exactly how they're going to respond to us. It looks like they're going to help us to some extent. Yes, Dave.
Dave, if I could, generally the way we've been working on this is that I would draft the minutes, Nancy would enhance the minutes, and then she was responsible for posting them and doing all that. I can continue to do the draft notes, but we need someone to help put things on the county website, coordinate with that, and also distribute information, forward the comments that the county's getting. So we need a point of contact at the county to basically do the administrative piece of what Nancy was doing, obviously running the meetings and doing all that too.
Yes, and that's what's under discussion right now, as I understand it, David.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm not sure that anybody from our group can do any of that work.
No.
Because it requires access to county systems.
Right, yeah, I mean, what I'll do is I'll continue to do the writing the draft notes. The only difference is, going forward, is in a week or so, you'll get them from me versus getting them from Nancy. And then we'll do the same process, but you're right, Kurt, everything else within the firewall of the county has to be done by somebody from the county office.
Yeah, someone from the county will have to post the minutes, someone from the county will have to post the agenda, that type of thing.
Right.
So, 6/13th, continuing to take testimony. Starting the 20th, we start deliberations.
And just to confirm, on the 6th, Dave,
Yes.
are we still having the 2 remaining people on the 6th of October? They're confirmed?
Nancy, are they confirmed? She says yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sylvia and Nancy Pluff. She's just confirmed the names.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything further before we adjourn?
I hate to bring this up again, but there's been discussion about the role of the alternates in terms of the deliberations. And I thought that was going to appear as an agenda item for future discussion, so where will that fit in?
Probably the 20th. We cannot discuss it tonight because it has not been 2 weeks that it's been published. The 29th is public comment. The 6th, we will be trying to get out of here probably. The 20th would be my guess. It's the last night for testimony, and I would believe that would be on the agenda that night.
Thank you.
Brian?
The 20th? I thought this one deliberation started.
Did I say? I'm sorry, I did. I said the 20th. I meant the 13th.
13th, okay.
That's the last of the interviews, the last of the information gathering. And so that should be on the agenda for the 13th. Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Phil moved, Bob would second. Vote. We are adjourned.